Um, I am going to be going over. Going to be going over a game. It's not showing up, is it? Between Go Seigen and Fujisawa Hosai. This is a pretty famous game. I originally was gonna do some live commentary again. It's not sure. Tonight because I wanted to practice for the tournament this weekend, 2015 Creator Invitational. But I was running a bit late, and I have to take care of something at 8. I didn't want to have to interrupt the stream, so instead I'm going to go do a short lecture. This game is really famous because it exemplifies a really sharp positional judgment, the ability to evaluate the worth or the value of different areas and compare them. It also shows you that your first intuition about a situation is not always right, even as you get stronger. So, Fujisawa Hosai is a fairly famous, maybe not as famous as Fujisawa Shuko, which was, I think his cousin. I believe this is cousin or brother, one of them. But he's also a pretty strong and famous professional player. This was played in 1943, so there was no komi, which makes the victory by white all the more impressive. Yeah, so 3-4 points are fairly common, even though this is after the 1930s, which was the new Fuseki. Star points were still, they were more common, but they weren't, 3-4 points were still the predominant opening. Even for Go Seigen, he still liked to put 3-4 point. Blocking closes. This is a fairly natural way to play. It invites white to approach the bottom right next. It lets black dictate the pace and the flow of the game. Typically in no komi games, and even in komi games, we say it's pretty bad to give black 2 corner enclosures, just because it makes the game pretty easy for black to play. So white approaches. This is a very common joseki. You might see this today. This move you won't probably see today. It does make white's shape very heavy, and it is not really a bad exchange because Q7 becomes a little odd. It becomes an empty triangle, so we can't say it's a bad move, but it is not played today. And the reason is after white extends, if you don't make this exchange, you can invade at R8. You know, so it's a little bit ajikashi, but it's not necessarily bad. I was supposed to message Monk when I got on, but I don't see him on KGS, so oh well. I'm like crooked. I don't know. I'm like looking at the camera or whatever, but it's okay. Anyway, so white extends. This is a fairly common opening. Black approaches this corner instead of the bottom left because he has this high enclosure in the upper right. In the game, white decides to enclose the bottom left corner, and that's because there's no good response. If white extends, so the first intuition is, oh, white has a start in the bottom left, let's pincer. But then black can counter pincer, and it works very well with his formation in the upper right. That's part of the reason black approaches this corner. If black approaches the bottom left instead, white could pincer, and this pincer works okay with this formation, but white wouldn't play it now, but later white has aims like this move. If black goes under, then white can push through and cut, or white could push and cut immediately too. These kind of moves are difficult to deal with. Another thought is, okay, if black's aiming to counter pincer and make use of the upper right, why doesn't white just extend this way? And this is kind of a joseki. But then black can approach this corner, and it feels like black has a corner enclosure and this corner as well. So white might be a little bit behind on territory playing this way. So white doesn't really want to play this way either. So white decides he's going to take this corner instead. And after this move, a follow-up move, so if black, for instance, just enclosed for some reason, now a pincer would be more balanced on the left-hand side. It would make a good formation, and white could aim next at developing at K4 and making a really big moyo. I see 3 viewers, so if you have any questions, just throw them out in chat. Okay, so since white tend to keep the upper left, black follows up. This is natural. He wants to press severely from his upper right corner to develop the top. This is probably the most popular variation now, but at the time it was rather still pretty new. I think it's one of Gosegan's inventions too. White more likely at the time would play like this. But this gives black a very solid position on the left without a lot of aji, which makes it harder to use the C6 stone. I'll point this out again in the alternate variation. Also, after black plays here, there is some room for black to move the F17 stone later. So it's not bad, but it leaves a lot of aji, and in this particular situation, the corner, because of the 2 adjacent corners, doesn't work well for white. Okay, so white pushes out, black pushes, white jumps. This is fairly common. Black peeps. If white just extends, then black won't necessarily push again. Black could just develop on the left. But if it's a really small difference, but if black pushes here, then white has a little bit more aji on the left because of this stone. He has this attachment now, or this placement. Also this attachment sometimes. Okay. The Joseki is for white to take the corner so he can stabilize his group. Maybe like this. But in this case, black might just develop the top and get good shape. A very nice moyo. And even if white tries to attack this group, black can run out and later play B15 to make a base. Or if white attacks this way, black can just settle. So this is a little bit uninteresting for white, especially in a no komi game. So white decides to pressure and split the top. This stone has a lot of meanings. There's a lot of reasoning behind why white plays this particular point. We'll see a little bit in the following variation, but one reason is if white follows up at N17, it makes a nice 2-space extension, as opposed to if white was closer to one side, or closer to the upper right, then it'd be more difficult. Clearly, if white wants to pincer these stones, also white can't play. If white goes further, black can make a base, which is not what white wants. White wants to play high because if black caps, then later, if black slides at B17, for instance, or plays C17, these stones are going to be isolated in the center. So black doesn't want, or white doesn't want that to happen. So that's partially why this stone is here. There's a little bit more we'll see. Black plays here because he doesn't want white to settle. Black could run out, but then white will settle, and it'll be 2 weak groups running, which is not bad for black. But black would rather have a weak white group on the left, a weak white group on the right, and only 1 weak black group in between. It also takes points and indirectly helps the 3 black stones by aiming to attach or slide. So it's a very good move. You should always think about not necessarily answering right away, right, for like a jump. This is possibly one variation, right? But then, you know, these are fighting each other. And maybe black wants to save the left, but there's some aji here too, you know, this kind of peep. Or just getting out. And these, it's not clear who's going to benefit from this because white has a follow-up in the upper right too. Yeah, and it's not necessary. So black could, this is a very nice, very calm way of playing for black. White turns, this is a key point of attacking. White doesn't, if black runs out now because the stone is here, For instance, if white for some reason played here, and black runs out, now since black is getting into the center first, the two stones are going to be separated and it's going to be difficult for white to manage. So this turn is very important. This Hana is a little bit questionable to me, but I suppose it's fine. If it were me, I would jump because I don't like the variation that followed in the game, but I suppose it's fine. I guess black didn't like this peep. It is a little hard to answer. Maybe. The turn is good shape generally. White Hana is black just backs off. That's pretty much the only move. If black Hana is, white could try to start a fight like this, and it feels kind of dangerous. And then, yeah, so then because of this placement of the stone, this one space eye stealing Tsuji is very nice. It's very difficult for black to manage. Black plays the empty triangle. There's not really many other moves. Black could try playing a Tsuji like peeping, but after white connects, even if black draws back, this turn is pretty difficult because it not only takes away the top points, black still has to play a move to defend the cut, and now white has Tsujis for making shape like this attachment. Sometimes this one too. So it's better for black if he wants to preserve the option of attacking both groups to not fix white's shape. And that's why he doesn't play that kind of peep. White plays a cap. The normal move would actually be to play the Kosumi because playing the knight's move, cap, exposes a bigger weakness. And when white already has two groups that are weak, this kind of cut is a very big liability. But Gosegan is reading pretty far ahead. So he has a particular strategy in mind. It's also a no-komi game, so if white plays something kind of passive like this, it might be not enough to reclaim the game. There's no follow-up from this move against the upper right. Right? All that white could do is really lean or jump. But if you cap, you open up this attachment. So white is trying to play a bit more actively. Again, there's this weakness exposed here, so it which is because of this nice move, and which is why you usually wouldn't see it, except in this game. And that's because Gosegan's emphasizing he doesn't really care too much about these stones. He cares about this area at the top and finding ways to manage and deal with it. So he doesn't mind sacrificing these stones if he can get a good result. H16 in particular is like a forcing move, so it's really fine to sacrifice it. Forcing moves already, by being forcing moves, by forcing your opponent to respond to them, already fulfill their role. So they don't need to do more, so you don't need to save them usually. White bumps to stop the cutting point, natural. Of course black will push, because otherwise if black pulls back, white can get good shape and is almost alive. And then this Hana is very unusual. Or not unusual, but it was what Gosegan was aiming at with the cap. If white just defends the stone, this result is really painful for white, because white can either pull back, or black can either pull back, or black can play this clamp to settle the shape. Or maybe slide. I have to look at it a bit more. But in any case, there's a lot of linking Aji. And really, all white has done is made this group here that he has to protect now. It's a very heavy, inflexible group. So instead of making that group, he's totally willing to allow black to cut these off. In exchange, he wants to eat into the upper right corner with this Hana. That's what Gosegan's plan is. He doesn't want to get too caught up in any one place, so he's willing to sacrifice them. Black plays this Hana. If black just cuts right away, there is a lot of bad Aji. Black has to end up playing this Hana anyway, but it's conceivable white might descend, forcing black to defend, and then playing here. This corner is really dangerous now, and there's still some Aji in the top. Not to mention black doesn't gain many points now, right? So let's say black defends. After white settles this group, this monkey jump almost erases half the points that black has tried to stake out here. So it's really important for black to hane, even though it looks a little submissive. White pushes, it's pushing between the elephant's eye, it's very good. Shape point, and then black cuts. Right, so black doesn't cut right away because he doesn't want white to play n18. White defends and black cuts off these stones. It looks pretty good for black because black's managed to take the whole top area. But white interposes a very nice peep. This timing is very important. If he played this any earlier, black probably would have descended at p17 and then this hane would have been bad, right, at n17. And if he plays it any later, it's possible that black will respond differently. The timing is important. Okay, so black blocks, and white descends first, probing how black's going to respond. This is almost forced, or it is forced. Black pushes, and then cuts. This cut, there's no way for white to save both groups, so white just decides to make a sacrifice. First he makes his group a little stronger to shorten the liberties of these stones, and then when black jumps out, he plays this hane, and this hane threatens to capture black on a ladder. So black connects, and then white defends. And so by the end of this, white has basically traded the top and these 4 stones in exchange for a very big territory on the right. And I think if it were me, I'd feel like white is a little bit ahead, maybe 5 points or 3 points, which is pretty good for no komi, right? Maybe, actually, if it's no komi, I feel like the game is pretty even. It's probably even at this point, but that means white caught up from the first move. Black plays here. This is a very important point. If black plays anywhere else, right? Maybe not now, but this is a very big move, as is this. Right, so now white can take the corner, and black no longer has any possibility to attack this white group. So this is a really important time for black to play here. If he plays anywhere else, he'll lose the chance to attack. And of course, you always want to attack from the base. Black takes points and takes away the corner from white, and removes white's base. White hanes, black connects, and white pushes. I was originally curious why black didn't play this move, but I think it's because even after these exchanges, there's some bad aji with this crosscut. If black tries to move to take this stone, then white can take the corner. So black doesn't want to deal with that, so instead he just connects solidly. And if white plays b18 now, black can peep and take away the eye. The corner is still only one eye, so then black could launch an attack on the whole group. White forces, and then counterattacks. I feel like if this white had komi, white would probably just hane here, because the corner is fairly big. It achieves the same goal of removing black's base. White still has some attachment aji, so maybe black has to hold back a line. It's a little submissive though, so I'm not really sure. But this would be more normal in a modern game if white had komi. But white wants to play more actively because the game is still pretty close. So he pincers black, putting pressure. Black makes a base for himself in the corner, but it's in gote. And white caps. This is a very key shape. It comes up a lot. It's a very common technique to attack because it exposes a vital point at b13. We can look at how exactly that plays out in a bit because it happens in the game. But it's very common. Any 2-space extension, any kind of 2-space extension like this Maybe white has some stones here that aren't floating. Right, this kind of cap, okay, maybe like this. This kind of cap is really strong because it exposes the weakness at G2. This is a really good shape to know, just in general. So black runs out between the elephant's eye. It's the shape weakness, but it's not really that big of a deal for white because it doesn't help black make eye shape or extend his space. White follows up by capping, and black runs out. White follows. White's pretty happy about this exchange. Black is running on dame, white's making points, and a bit of influence. Pushes, white exchanges. It's important to note white doesn't hane. A lot of maybe low Dawn players, I know my KJ says I'm low Dawn, and I am low Dawn when I'm not thinking, but a lot of weaker players will hane because they think, oh, it's exposing this weakness for black, right? I'm getting more points. But after black comes back, black's shape is a lot stronger with this tiger's mouth. It's a lot better shape, and black can move over in this direction faster. And so white actually ends up helping black. Whereas by just pulling back, black can only really attach. If he doesn't attach, he can play this kusumi, but it's harder for black to run away. So it's a really important key thing to not help your opponent when you're attacking. I think I talked about that in one of my videos, not giving your opponent free moves. This kind of hane gives black, is sort of like giving a black free moves by helping him move this way. Move towards the bottom faster. So black attaches. This is really the only way for black to move out now. And white hanes. Black crosscuts. The timing of this is really important. If black just backs off, white will peep at this eye, and this becomes a gote move to defend. No, not completely, but white's pretty happy to settle. White still has a bunch of forcing moves here, so it's not, after this, white is pretty secured at the top, and then white could take sente to get the last big point. Maybe white would hold back a little bit with the thickness here, but it's the same idea. Black's trying to crosscut in order to both probe how white's going to respond, and also to take sente and create forcing moves. This is another kind of probe. Black saw that white pulled back here and is saying, oh, I'm gonna, spoil the shape, make white heavier, make it harder for him to run out with this group, but it's actually kind of a mistake. White doesn't have to connect because this is only like 10 points, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so it's 16 points, 15 points. Although black has a capture, so it's like 15 points. But instead of connecting, white just plays the poneki, right? White doesn't have to try to save his shape. If white connects, this exchange is really good for black because now white doesn't have an eye at the top, and white becomes very heavy. And we see the purpose of G10. After black pulls out, white can't really play something like this because after black runs this way, even though black's group is a little bit weak on the left, white's group here has no eyes. Maybe half an eye here. But there's no eyes at the top. There's no way for white to make 2 eyes, right? Throw in. They're both fake eyes. Here it's throw in again. So we see what black's intention was with this cut and with this peep. But white ignores it because he's saying that the center area, in combination with this weakness here, is much bigger than the top. Black follows up because otherwise his E17 move is actually meaningless. If he doesn't follow up, it's a dominant point, right? So he has to follow up. And then white follows up with his original aim in this shape. So the idea behind this is white can play, in the game black plays here, but let's say black cuts. If black cuts, then these 3 stones are isolated, right? If black tries to take white, actually even in this case it works even better because black can't do this. and if black pulls back, white can kill these 2 stones before black kills these 2. But even if you pretend these 4 stones were in here, normally black would kill these, but then white gets very good thickness in the center, or in this case kills these stones. So it's a very good exchange. So black wants to connect up, and when black plays this way, white's able to remove the eye shape, right? So black no longer has eye space here, and his eye space is condensed. So white profits a bit, and then takes the pawn and key. White is now very thick in the bottom area, so it makes sense that black's next move would be to reduce this thickness, which is what this move is. I think most modern... White's next move kind of confused me. Most players at first it confused me because I thought white would invade. And then after black plays here, white would like push, expose the weakness, and then attack these because white is very thick on the left. But this is actually overplay because there's still weaknesses in the corner that black can aim at. So instead, white just defends calmly. This is a very big move. It secures a lot of points on the side, but more importantly, it removes all the aji in the corner that black can try to exploit. And it also starts developing the center a bit, and black has to defend the J3 stone, which he does. This move's a little better than this, or jumping. I actually don't know why I'm saying this. Someone asked me about it before when I was showing this game. The general idea, this happens a lot in amateur games, and I'm not saying I'm a professional because I'm not, but it happens that people try to make, this kind of shape, but it actually has weaknesses on both sides, whereas if you just defend one side, you have less weaknesses. But I don't know, black shape is pretty solid anyway. White pushes. If we do a quick count, the right hand side for white is about the same as the top, and I can count it quickly too. So there's about 50 points for black at the top, and on the right hand side there's maybe 43 points, but white has forcing moves in the center here, so they're roughly the same. And then if we look at the left and the bottom, it's clear that white has way more points than black, mainly because this is such deep Wayo. If you kind of rotate the left hand side and compare it with the bottom right for black, you can see that it expands like way more lines. This is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines, 10, 11 lines, and this is 13-ish. Not to mention the 2 space extension here. So it's pretty good. White has a decent sized lead. So white's trying to simplify the game by fixing the borders, basically. It's kind of like a reduction move. It prevents black from expanding more, but also fixes the border so it's easier to finish the game. White's probing. This is really common from this Joseki. Black defends here to not leave weaknesses, and white cuts. Joseki is for black to play here, and then white can get this move in sente. It's a good endgame combination with this wedge. But since black's behind, he decides to play this hane, which is actually kind of an overplay. White turns. Gosegan is the kind of guy who, if you try to take a little bit extra, he'll counterattack for it. A little bit more than what is generally feasible. So he decides to counterattack. I think most players would be comfortable just defending because black still has to come back here. You can see that this is a little bit weaker. If black turns, white will turn. And now black didn't gain too much because there's a ko here, which is pretty burdensome. So black would just play normal, kind of pulling back, but he can aim at taking the stone late, connecting here, which would be very big endgame. And if white takes it now, it's in gote. Whereas before, when white descends here, it's not there. Descends here, it's in Sente for white. So it's a pretty big difference in endgame. I say big, but it's like 5 points, or 4 points, which is still very big for endgame. But anyway, so black tries to play this, which is an overplay. White doesn't block, white turns. Black has to extend. If black, I don't know, connects here, white will Atari and black dies. Black connects the other way. I haven't looked at it, but I'm pretty sure this dies. If black extends, Atari connects. Maybe not. Maybe just Hane. Yeah, looks like black has one less liberty. Right? That way, but if you go this way, black has 1 liberty, white has 2. So black has to extend, and white takes the corner. And then black is trying to run. This is a very aggressive way, but this is actually in line. This is very complicated, I guess I would say, for white to play this way, but it's more in line with, I guess, the truer nature of the game, or the closer state. So now white lost territory on the right, but he took the corner, exposed this weak point, and reduced the bottom with monkey jumps, or this weak point. On the other hand, black broke into the right but is not settled, and white has a weak group in the center that black can aim at. So white's first priority is to settle his weak group. That should be everyone's first priority. Black wants to settle. He's saying, okay, you can settle, I can settle, but black feels like he took away more points from white. White doesn't want to make it easy. If white just Hanes on the outside, black can make a very easy life, or play this one too. So black cuts on the inside, white cuts, and so black's trying to make shape and get out, which he does. White Ataris and then pushes. White is trying to settle this group. This black group is still not settled though. White still has these forcing moves that can make it difficult, and then if white gets strong on the bottom, white can cut. Black Hanes that to prevent that scenario, to strengthen his group more, is also a vital point. White Hanes because if black extends, it's really, really painful. White pushes. White's just finishing his eye shape. This is why it's really important to do accurate positional analysis. Gosegan knows that if he settles here, even though he's giving black some territory in the center, he has enough in this side and in this corner, in combination with the endgame at the bottom, to wrap up the game. White jumps. Black set. This moves looks a little weird. Yeah, this Saturday. This move looks a little weird, but it's vital. If black defends the center more, this is really difficult to deal with. So first off, if black plays here now, then I have to remember the exact order for this. I think here, but white can scoop up and cut out black's territory, and black has no base and is floating. If black plays here, it's kind of similar. You know, Atari. White can push, black blocks, then this Atari is threatening the ladder and these 4 stones. It's just, there's not a really good answer. So white pushes, and then white gets this move. This is really big. It's at the border between this kind of center-ish moyo here for white and this moyo for black. There's not a good way to defend, so black plays elsewhere. This is a very common tesuji. Normally white would pull back and play like actually just pull back, and then black gets sente to jump or do some other reduction. The reason is in the game white plays here, and black's very happy because he can now live in the corner. White forces once, and this is like massive, right? This is a 10-point swing, so like 20 points, and black still gained 4 points. It's really big. But white plays this way because he notices there's a lot of potential at the top. He can use the aji of these stones. And this is why sacrificing is really important, because if you sacrifice stones and you don't overcommit to trying to save them and die, but if you sacrifice them in a meaningful way, they still possess a lot of aji that you can use later. So white hanes and makes a ko. Right? Now this whole game is kind of a little bit crazy, but Gosegin's known for his ko fights, and he's very accurate. You can see that black on the whole board doesn't actually have much territory if white manages to kill or live here. Right, black has this upper left and a little bit at the bottom that can still be reduced. On the other hand, white has this giant left hand side, and if white kills this, they'll have the top. So it's pretty big. Black takes, and then white plays here, exploiting the aji that was left over from the bottom right. Black defends, white takes, black plays this move. It's a very strong co-threat, because now black is saying, okay, if white takes, even though white can connect up, it's in gote, right? Actually, wait, black can Atari first. No, you can't. I'm silly. Black can't Atari. Anyway, so white can connect up, but it's in gote. Black still maintains the points here, and then this exchange on the bottom is not necessarily a good one. Now black can fix up the shape, and white has given black a free stone. So it's a very good exchange for him. Also, black has fixed up the aji on the outside that white used indirectly as co-threats. So it's a very nice turn. But instead of capturing the stone to make the game easy or simpler, Gosegin makes the game more complicated by upping the stakes of the ko. This is only possible because he's really confident in his co-threats and exactly what's going to happen, because we can see after black takes at N19, all these stones are in Atari, but white will have to follow up on his co-threat, so black will have a chance to take these stones as well. So black's co-threats have to have a value more than like 20 points, 30, 40 points. It's really, really difficult. But this is a really nice co-threat because it not only threatens to pull out at K4, not only activates N3, but even after black responds, there's still a lot of aji here, and a lot more co-threats that black can use, or that white can use. White Ataris, black threatens to cut this off, so white defends. Black takes back, and white follows up on his co-threat. It's really good if you can make use of co-threats to make more co-threats without giving away free points. Right? You never want to make co-threats that just give points up. For instance, if white played something like T17, that would be giving away points. I don't know why he would play that, but you never know. But these kind of threats are very good. They're natural moves. Black Ataris, there's not really any other move. If black does an Atari, then white can play L3 later, and black's whole position is kind of dangerous because it doesn't have a base. White takes back, black threatens to cut. Right, one more move, black can black can connect, or Atari and then connect. Similar. White cuts. This is the exact thing I was trying to say to try to avoid to do, though, because by making this exchange, black has weakened the center for him. So now these three are short on liberties, and there's some aji here. White can also try to gain more points here, and this stone was almost a gift, so it's not a very good threat. But Gosegin knew when he started this code that he was up on co-threats, and so black, since he's behind on co-threats, is trying to make the best of the situation. Black takes back, white follows up, right? It's still this aji. And at this point, I forgot black plays here. Okay, black follows up once. They make this exchange. These are simple co-threats, right? Atari, Atari, Atari. But black, after Atari, he finishes the ko. he doesn't have time. If he keeps responding, he's going to run out of co-threats. So he has to finish this co. Now the question is, are these 10 stones in Atari? What about that? Well, the thing is, it's only 20 points, quote unquote only. And we'll see after white finishes up on the bottom side what his plan was to get compensation for this. And you have to consider, it's 20 points in Gote. So black already spent one move to finish the ko. And even though he finished the ko, taking the ko is only worth like 2 points. So he's spending 2 moves for 22 points. So each move is worth 11 points. That's pretty substantial, but it's not like a huge swing. And we'll see that white's plan from here. So white cuts these stones off. This is 9 stone, or so I can't count, 7 stones, which is pretty big. Not almost as big as the 10. But not only that, it also weakens the black group on the left. It just so happens that G3 is on the vital point of this Pona key. So it's actually pretty difficult for him to make shape. So black has to live now. He still doesn't have time to take these 10 stones. And white cuts immediately. Even if black lives at the bottom, this area is very big. This is not only 5 stones, but maybe another 10 points. So it's 15, 20 points. It's a very big cut. Black attaches. This is a kind of Tetsuji for making life. White Hanes, taking away the base. It's an extremely severe move that can only be done with reading. Black blocks, white connects, and then black takes. Black knows, or feels, not sure which, that he's behind. Because this bottom side is very big, and this left side is very big. Even though it looks like black totally massacred the top, which he did, I guess. But white Tenuki'd this stone, he sacrificed these, then Tenuki'd this one 3 times, and gave up and just sacrificed the corner. It looks very good for black, but on the rest of the board, white has this very large left side, has taken this huge amount of stones at the bottom, and so if black saved this group with the next move, and white connected here, he would be too far behind. Right, we can see that maybe this exchange, and then white connects. If black, saves the stone, saves the points in the center, maybe white forces twice, and then and then starts an attack on this group here. It's a very difficult situation for black to manage, even though he has a lot of profit. His overall position is very precarious. So black took, and white follows up as a threat on the bottom. Black felt this was the best time for him to try to come back, though, because this is still a ko. If it was just dead or alive, well, he doesn't have time to make it alive because white will save the upper right if it's alive. But if it was just dead, then there's no way for him to come back. So he makes it a ko. These are local threats for white. This is a very nice move because it removes the potential Atari from black here. Black plays another local move, solidifying his position before coming here. And then, again, local threats. Local threats are the best thing to play in a ko fight usually, because they're guaranteed to not be ignored. These are pretty one-way. All of white's moves are local. There's like no other choice for white. So the ko threat burden's on black. But yeah, so here we look at the board. Black has killed the top. There's like no ko threats for black there. The right hand side is not one move away from being dead. The left hand side, there's no more local threats. The bottom side, nothing really. Black can take a couple stones, but that's really it. So black plays this throne at t4, which is basically trading one ko for another ko, and it's never good to do that because if you didn't have the ko threats to win one ko, you're not going to have the ko threats to win the other ko. So white defends this ko. It's kind of a sign of a lost position. Black takes, and white doesn't even fight the ko. He just makes a trade. He lets black take the corner, or oh, I guess this is a threat. My bad. But now he makes a trade. He lets black take the corner, and then he just takes these stones to make sure the corner looks big because these white stones are dead. But since black has to spend 3 moves to capture them, it's only 8 points. So it's not as big as it looks. Black also has to spend a move here, otherwise white plays 0-3 and kills him. So white gets Sente, and the corner is not as big as it looks. If we look at the whole board now, it looks like, again, black destroyed the whole top side in a very convincing fashion. But now this whole bottom quadrant, fourth of the board, a little bit more than fourth of the board, is all white. And this whole big quadrant is much bigger than the top. And white has a group here in the middle of the right. Black has no points anywhere except the top. He has a little bit here, but that might be equivalent. You know, this is like 8, 10, 12, 14 points, 15-ish. That's like, this is 6, this is 12, 13, 14, 15. You know, this little region here somehow is equivalent to this, you know, the black's partial points here. And then the rest quadrant of the board is much bigger than the top. White continues by reducing the center and expanding this area. Black plays endgame, or Sente endgame, white has to respond. And black is trying to make sure white can't surround this part, this this portion, while aiming at this Hane. Black just continues reducing, white defends, black plays Sente, and black, if white plays here, it's Sente, and if black plays, so black plays here to stop that, prevent that. There's also a little bit of Aji with this move and then this attach. This is Sente, Sente. Black doesn't have time to play here, otherwise white will play here, and then white can keep playing endgame moves. Actually not there, white can play here. Actually I could just play it. If black plays like this, then white can play here. Right, and then so this is a pretty big reduction. Now black has to defend this cut, or he loses 2 stones, then white can keep pushing in. It's a lot of reduction for black. So white defends, black takes, and white takes. Black plays a Sente endgame, defends this, otherwise the push is Sente, right, as I showed before. Playing here is Sente, so against these two, then this one is almost Sente, and it's pretty big. If black defends this way, this is Sente. Atari, then white has black has to spend another move to capture these. It all gets reduced to no points, so this is like a 5-ish point move. It's pretty big. White plays these Sente and then plays here, solidifying and fixing the right hand side. Black couldn't kill this, but this move prevents the clamp or the Hane. I guess they're kind of similar. And so it's worth maybe 4 points. And this is the last move of the game. After this, black resigns because it's clear that even though black managed to kill this whole top area and the bottom, he has the bottom right, white's huge quadrant here, or like quadrant and a half, and the little bit on the right is more than enough to overcome Komi, the lack of Komi, and the top side. So the highlights of this game are white sacrificing. I'll just run through it quickly again with less explanation. The highlights are this Tenuki. This is a really nice move because it's not locally defending, but it has a big impact on the rest of the board against these high stones. This is also a move that was a little bit before its time. It was not to say it wasn't played, but it was the less common choice at the time. This pincer is very aggressive. You know, it's basically kind of rejecting or disrespecting almost these 3 stones, but it's very well placed. It's 3 spaces from the left and 4 spaces from the right. Black has to play here to keep pressure up on white, otherwise white can settle at the top. It's another possible strategy, but why not take points and help your stones and make white weak? It's a very, normal, good move. But because of the placement of K16, white never intended to save it. He's placing Aji into black's position. And then white exposes a weakness for black at this cutting point. This whole opening is very, very interesting. White exposes a weakness at the benefit of opening up a weakness in black. Black exploits it to try to connect. White's making shape, and then black breaks shape. But white doesn't want to defend against black. White counters it to counterattacks, sacrificing a pretty large portion of the board. This is all forced, and white decides to sacrifice this entire top side by almost the 60th move. White said, okay, you can have this entire top side, but in compensation, white got the whole right side, and a corner enclosure in the bottom left because white tended to keep the upper left. And at this point, white has basically overcome Komi. The game is even. Black decides, this is vital to attack white. White settles and counterattacks black. White launches the attack, chases black for a bit. Black tries to run. Black makes a nice. The idea is nice, right? To exchange this cut in order to get a counterattack back on white. But white decides not to defend. He says, you can have part of me, I'll take opponent key and get very thick in the center. Black has to follow up. White follows up on his attack and takes the opponent key. At this point, white is slightly ahead, maybe 5 points, 5 points, which means he overcame Komi and the deficit he had, or he overcame the deficit of being second and gained 5 points. And all he's done is throw away stones, right? He said, oh, you want these? You can have them. But I'll take, the side, thickness, corner. Very good exchanges. Black reduces the wall. White leaves no Aji, and it takes points. White simplifies the game, and then black tries to launch another counterattack. Or, not counterattack, but gain a little bit extra for the endgame. But white counterattacks again, saying no, you can't have that. Both sides settle their shape. Black chases white, but white settles, and white gets the vital point on the border between two moyos. Black tries to play a nice Sente endgame, but white finds a good counterploy because he's able to create this ko. Which I don't think Fujisawa was expecting. Maybe he did, but he felt he was behind enough to try it. Not sure. White, because of this exchange in the bottom right, is able to find many ko threats to exploit the Aji of this shape. Even though this ko is a potentially very huge burden, white enlarges it. Plays many ko threats, and eventually black runs out of ko threats. And even though white has left 10 stones in danger, white's able to kill 7 stones and isolate a black group surrounded by white thickness, which is a favorable position. White plays normal, takes points, and black tries to come back. And at this point, if you just looked at half the board, you think, man, black has to be destroying white. But in reality, black is actually falling quite far behind, and this ko is just the last, almost a formality, because there's no ko threats left for black to use. And white, many players, they might see this ko and be like, okay, I have to win this ko next, right? I won the ko at the top, I won this ko at the bottom left, now I have to win this ko. But white is very calm, he knows he's ahead, knows how much he can give away, and so he plays these exchanges, takes Sente, and then reduces the center for a very simple win. Reduces the center, defenses cutting points, and takes the last big point. Very nice, clean game. And not clean, but very nice and very interesting game. You know, white sacrificing a lot of stones at the beginning. Sacrificing throughout the whole game, but leaving Aji and Ko threats and, you know, a lot of difficult things for black to deal with throughout the game. And benefiting by Tenuki and fighting later. That's all I really had to say about the game. I thought it was a really cool game. If anyone has anything they want to ask, I'll answer any questions, but otherwise I'm going to go to dinner. I thought this would be very cool to watch. I originally planned to do some live commentary after my terrible games yesterday. I thought, okay, I'll play some live commentary, I'll focus. I need to practice anyway for the tournament this weekend, which, by the way, you should turn into. It's at 4 p.m. on Saturday, 4 p.m. PST on Saturday, February 7th. And it should be really fun. I think my first round opponent... actually, I do know who my first round opponent, but I won't say it because it'll be a surprise. But it should be very fun. Tune into my stream or Durin or Bat. I don't know what he prefers to go by. I think Durin, but it's hard to pronounce. Anyway, turn into Bat's stream. And I think everyone else should be streaming it too, or at least they'll, if they want to anyway. But it should be a very good tournament. It should be fun. And yeah, thank you for watching. Catch you all later.